we are learning new details about Iran's demands to end the war. President Trump says the latest Iranian proposal is, quote, totally unacceptable. The Iranians today are calling it reasonable and generous. Iranian state media says the counterproposal calls for recognition of sovereignty over the blockaded Strait of Hormuz, among other demands. There was no mention of nuclear weapons. Let's get to CNN's Julia Benbrook at the White House for the latest this morning. So totally unacceptable, the president says. Now what?
That's the big question. We have reached out to the White House here for more details on what exactly was in this response. What does it cover? And like you mentioned, does it address Iran's nuclear capabilities, the highly enriched uranium, the things that we have been discussing for several weeks now? But what is clear is that President Donald Trump is not happy with this response. He called it totally unacceptable. I want to pull it up for you now. This was a Truth Social post that came Sunday, and in it he said, "I've just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable." Now, according to Iranian state media, that counter proposal, it included sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, as well as demands for compensation for war damages, which have been non-starters here at the White House. And the response, it also came later than those in the administration were expecting it to. On Friday, we heard from Trump, we heard from other administration officials who said that they expected to see a response from Tehran sometime that day. And even then, Trump was asked about the timing. Did he believe that Iran was slow rolling this response? And he essentially said, we'll soon find out if that is the case. And then just yesterday, speaking with Axios, Trump did confirm that he had had another conversation with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He said that it was a good conversation, that they discussed a number of things, but Iran's response here was part of that. So the big question remains, what's next? How does Trump see next steps? We have heard him threaten escalation multiple times when things have fallen through in the past. It's really unclear at this moment, though. We do expect to at least see him a couple of times today. There should be reporters in the room with him at various events, so hopefully we'll get an update at some point.
You know, I want to put up a picture of the Strait of Hormuz, which is still very much closed this morning, as President Trump says that Iran's offer, counterproposal on peace, is totally unacceptable. Admiral, you've been at this a long time. How surprising is that? The U.S. waited and waited and waited for the Iranians to respond. They thought it was going to be Thursday, then Friday. It didn't come Saturday. Finally, it came yesterday, and the president didn't like it.
Iran invented the game of chess, and you can see them playing pretty cleverly. They don't actually have a great hand of cards here, John, but one of their true life skills in Tehran is negotiating. And so they're going to string it out as long as they can. Look, I think President Trump has three options very quickly. He can kind of walk away from this, throw up his hands. I think that's tempting, but not the right move, since it would leave the strait in the hands of the Iranians and all the nuclear material still probably at the bottom of a shaft in Isfahan. So not a good option. A second option, he can resume massive bombing campaigns. And, you know, I think that is increasingly a possibility here if his frustration level rises. And then number three, where I think this probably lands better than even chance, you continue that blockade, you put more economic pressure on the Iranians. Maybe you do some targeted strikes to eliminate the, shall we say, intransigent elements in the Iranian Revolutionary Guards that appear to be driving the train from Tehran. Some combination of all of that, but it's as unsettled as it's been since we started dropping bombs a couple of months ago, John.
Yeah, it is interesting because the United States, some officials were indicating they thought the blockade would have worked weeks ago at this point, but still hasn't forced Iran's hand, at least not yet. So the president this week, a fascinating trip, right? The president is going to China to meet with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Now, there are some people who say that Iran will be a major subject of discussion here, but my question is Xi, is he mostly concerned about Iran over here, or does he have his eyes glancing south to Taiwan right there, Admiral?
Well, first and foremost, recall that President Xi is a strategic thinker. He kind of plays the long game from everything I've seen. So I think the short answer to your question is both. He sees Iran as a prime source of hydrocarbons. He's getting oil at a significant discount. He'd like that to continue, but he would also like the opportunity to put more pressure on what he regards as the rogue province of Taiwan. So I think both of those are going to come up, but I'm not looking for any geopolitical breakthrough in Beijing, John. What I think we're going to see is two leaders who will pretend to like each other a lot. There'll be some minor deliverables, maybe a little less tension on the trade and tariff front. No big breakthroughs one way or the other, but it'll be great theater watching the two of them on the Great Wall of China, in the Hall of the People, in the Forbidden Palace. Look for some great photo ops, not a lot of substance.
With me now to discuss the CNN politics and global affairs commentator, Sabrina Singh. Thank you for being here. Look, where we are right now, where does this leave us in this war with Iran?
Well, I think where it leaves us right now is both sides looking at each other and determining who can outlast each other longer. And I do think right now Iran has more of time on its side. Iran is willing to endure the economic pain and doesn't really care about its population. I mean, obviously, we've seen that from the crackdown of protests within the country versus the United States and this administration. I mean, every single day, Americans are seeing their gas prices going up. I think in 49 states right now, gas is over $4. So the economic pain and pressure is really being felt here at home. And this administration is going to have to make that political calculation as well as how long they can withstand this war. I think both sides really don't want to resume kinetic action. But obviously, the president has said multiple times that he is willing to take that action. And that remains to be seen on what his latest response to this Iranian proposal will really bring, and if that brings a U.S. response. I don't think this week, but in the coming weeks, potentially.
Iran, as part of one of the things that it's demanding, is asking for sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Is this something that proves the idea that this war made it crystal clear to Iran that power over the strait is almost as valuable as their power in the region as their nuclear ambitions are?
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, Iran used its own nuclear option by closing this strait and then just crippling global markets everywhere around the world. And so by doing that, that really put the United States on its back foot. But no matter what, I think the idea that Iran would control the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely and charge some type of toll, I mean, that just goes against everything when it comes to freedom of navigation. And so the United States really, and this administration in particular, now has to force Iran back to the table and say that is a non-starter for us, but we have to get this strait open. And I think potentially what you could see this week is Trump is going to China. And is this something that he discusses with President Xi? I mean, we know President Xi and Iran have close ties to each other. Can China help potentially open this strait and get it open for all countries around the world so that, you know, global markets can essentially potentially reset, you know, over the next few months and years too.
CNN's David Goldman is with us this morning. A silver lining, I think, if you're talking about the macro decades-long evolution here.
That's right, John. I mean, we've talked so much about the negative consequences of this war and, you know, what could happen in the future. But I thought it might be good to take a look at some of the positive things that could come out of this war way down the road. We're certainly not talking about right now. But if you figure that the Strait of Hormuz could no longer be an energy supply chokehold if they start routing oil around it, well, that could be a net good. And that seems to be what is happening, where Saudi Arabia and the UAE are already building pipelines to get around that strait. It could be in 10 years that, you know, there's no way for Iran to choke off a fifth of the world's energy supply. That would be a net good for the world. Also, OPEC is already starting to fray at the edges. The UAE left OPEC, or is about to leave OPEC. That could be a net good as well, because OPEC has put pressure on prices higher. Now we could see some pressure lower again down the road. And the last thing is the shift to renewables that is inevitably going to come out of this. Already, Asia and Europe have started to demand more renewables like solar and wind from China, which makes all of it, and that could be a net good as well. So it is possible that a decade from now, we look back at this moment as a shift, as a real fundamental shift in the energy supply, and it could be, intended or not, a good thing.
It requires adaptation, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it
that's
requires
right.
adaptation. When you face a crisis like this, things do change. We ended up with compact cars in the 1980s because of the
Yes.
oil embargoes, of the 1970s. So people do adapt and try to shift to face the consequences, but it does take time.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And ultimately it could remove power from Iran to push things politically, but not today.
No, we're certainly not talking on a short time scale. We're talking on a very long time scale.
But it does bear watching. David Goldman, great to see you. Thank you very much.